Thursday evening as Chicago's former mayor.
Drama in Dalton. Credit card transactions amounting to thousands of dollars without explanation and millions more owed to vendors.
A bombshell report highlights just how much financial trouble the village of Dalton is really.
Trustees say the village is facing financial disaster and they blame the mayor for mismanagement.
The recent revelation by former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot about a much worse than anticipated fiscal crisis has sent shockwaves through the residents of Dalton and Thornton Township. While the area had long been aware of its financial struggles, the scale of the crisis was far more severe than many had imagined. The township is now grappling with millions of dollars in debt, a situation that has worsened over time. This has fueled growing frustration among residents, many of whom have demanded that Mayor Tiffany Henyard step down despite mounting pressure. Henyard has shown little to no remorse, instead continuing her term with a seeming disregard for the increasing accusations of financial mismanagement, corruption, and favoritism. Under her administration, the community has faced a series of scandals, including claims of embezzlement and the misuse of public funds. Instead of addressing these concerns, Henyard's leadership has become synonymous with controversy. Overshadowing any positive achievements she may have had, the revelation of an FBI investigation into her actions has only intensified public outcry, with residents now seeing this as a potential path to justice and accountability. While many of the community's previous leaders have been content with political theater and empty promises, the increasing evidence against Henyard has shifted the dynamic, leaving the public deeply disillusioned and wary. This has made clear the deep-seated issues plaguing the administration, particularly in areas such as the management of public finances and services. A particularly disturbing aspect of the administration's financial mishandling is the discovery that a shocking $36 million is missing from the village's general fund. This revelation has fueled anger and mistrust in Henyard's leadership, as many believe that taxpayer money has been squandered on personal luxuries, including expensive trips and an $85,000 personal audit. The public now sees her leadership as disconnected from the real struggles facing the community, further exacerbating resentment toward her actions. These failures have not only affected the community's finances, but also the essential services that residents rely on, such as transportation and food assistance. Thornton Township, which falls under Henyard's jurisdiction, has also suffered due to the mismanagement of resources. These cutbacks have disproportionately impacted vulnerable groups, such as seniors, further fueling criticism of Henyard's administration. The FBI investigation into her activities has provided some hope to local residents, who see it as a potential means of restoring accountability and justice. Critics, however, are increasingly concerned that Henyard's lack of leadership is pushing the community toward collapse. The ongoing allegations of financial irresponsibility and unethical behavior paint a grim picture for the future of Dalton and Thornton Township. Some residents suspect that Henyard's actions are deliberate, with accusations that she is stalling efforts to address the township's critical issues while enriching herself at the public's expense. Trustees such as Chris Gonzalez, along with other critics, have warned that her continued neglect could have dangerous consequences for the community, especially in areas like insurance, transportation, and senior services. As the situation grows more dire, calls for a complete change in leadership have gained momentum. Many hope that the removal of Henyard could pave the way for a new direction that prioritizes the community's well-being, financial stability, and integrity. As the township edges closer to collapse, residents are eager for leadership that will restore confidence, accountability, and a commitment to serving the public good. Henyard's repeated absence from crucial township meetings, especially those aimed at resolving the ongoing insurance crisis, has further highlighted her indifference to the community's needs.
Sources that federal agents are in fact interviewing witnesses as part of a possible investigation that may or...
The controversies surrounding Tiffany Henyard reached a boiling point as accusations mounted from various quarters, particularly business owners who claimed their companies were unfairly targeted. These allegations painted a disturbing picture of an administration prioritizing personal and political agendas over fostering a healthy local economy. Business owners reported an atmosphere of fear and retaliation, with those who declined to support Henyard's political events facing arbitrary fines, harsh regulatory actions, or even business closures. Critics argued that this behavior represented a blatant abuse of power, undermining the financial stability of enterprises crucial to the town's prosperity. As these claims of retaliatory practices grew, public trust in Henyard's leadership dwindled. Residents expressed outrage, accusing the mayor's administration of favoring personal interests rather than working for the broader welfare of the community. This sentiment further strained Henyard's already troubled relationship with local businesses, igniting widespread calls for greater transparency and accountability. The scandals surrounding Henyard didn't end with accusations of political retaliation. As evidence of financial mismanagement and misconduct continued to mount, the public perception of her administration as failing became more entrenched. Many saw these incidents not as isolated cases, but part of a troubling pattern of leadership focused on self-interest. Critics argued that Henyard's leadership had become untenable, with the mounting backlash pushing her closer to a crisis point. Despite this, Henyard denied any wrongdoing, dismissing the accusations as baseless attempts to discredit her. However, her refusal to directly address the grievances of both residents and business owners only served to escalate tensions. Further, this lack of resolution deepened divisions within the community. Opponents pointed to these ongoing scandals as proof that Henyard valued political survival over the town's economic and social well-being. As the controversy spiraled out of her control, her reputation took a significant hit. Critics increasingly described her leadership as unsustainable, and the calls for her removal from office grew louder. The fallout from these allegations stretched far beyond the business community. As residents began to lose faith in Henyard's ability to govern effectively, her actions came to symbolize a broader disconnect between her priorities and the needs of the people she was elected to serve. Trust eroded rapidly, and with mounting evidence of misconduct, many questioned whether her administration could weather the crisis or if these events marked the end of her political career. Her actions, which appeared to prioritize personal gain over public welfare, led to widespread frustration among both business owners and residents. As accusations of power misuse and financial impropriety mounted, Henyard's credibility took a serious blow. Despite her denials, her failure to engage meaningfully with those raising concerns only deepened public dissatisfaction. Calls for accountability grew stronger, and the pressure on Henyard intensified now. As scrutiny of her administration reaches a peak, it remains uncertain whether Henyard can recover from this storm. Many believe her leadership has collapsed under the weight of mismanagement and misplaced priorities, and the future of her political career hangs in the balance. With growing public demands for change, it's unclear if Henyard can restore trust or if her tenure is nearing its end.
Both of the Dalton bars that were raided and shut down last night, we visited the day before as part of our ongoing investigation into allegations of political corruption in Dalton.
They just rushed in here, put police at the front of the door like they was doing a raid on a drug.
A series of controversial events involving Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard has caused a deep divide within the community, with allegations of financial mismanagement, embezzlement, and retaliatory actions against local businesses dominating the headlines. These controversies reached a boiling point after a raid by Dalton police officers on two popular local businesses, Pablo's Bearing Cafe and Rink's Bearing Cafe, both located a block apart on Clyde. The police operation, which involved around 10 squad cars, was described as peaceful, yet the tension was palpable. Customers, workers, and business owners were forced out of the cafes, and many began accusing Mayor Henyard of orchestrating a campaign of harassment against those who refused to support her political events. Business owners argued that the village had revoked their licenses, even though they were still legally operating under state jurisdiction. As the situation escalated, accusations against Henyard intensified, portraying her as a leader who prioritized personal vendettas and political agendas over the economic well-being of Dalton. With local businesses now at the center of the controversy, the economic stability of the village began to crumble, and residents voiced their frustration at the lack of effective leadership. The situation worsened when former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was assigned to investigate the alleged illicit activities of Henyard. This investigation marked a significant turning point in the saga. Lightfoot's administration, determined to uncover the truth behind the allegations, faced immediate pushback from Henyard. The mayor's response to the investigation was swift and hostile, with her attempting to place the blame for the escalating issues squarely on the shoulders of the village trustees. This move not only heightened tensions within local government, but also alienated Henyard further from a population already growing wary of her leadership. Henyard claimed that Lightfoot's inquiry was politically motivated and aimed at tarnishing her reputation. However, as the investigation unfolded, it became increasingly clear that the mayor's administration was plagued by financial mismanagement and corruption. Evidence emerged pointing to embezzlement of public funds, extravagant personal expenditures, and questionable contracts. Henyard's actions, it seemed, had been focused on enriching herself rather than serving the community. Meanwhile, the village's finances were in a state of disarray, with deficits mounting and the general fund showing significant irregularities despite the growing evidence against her. Henyard refused to acknowledge the findings, dismissing them as part of a smear campaign. She insisted that the financial issues Dalton faced were the result of systemic problems inherited from her predecessors, not mismanagement during her time in office. However, as more officials and residents demanded accountability, Henyard's defense grew weaker. Her attempts to shift the blame were seen as desperate, and many began to question her ability to lead effectively. The investigation exposed a clear pattern of financial waste and a lack of transparency in Henyard's decision-making. Lightfoot's findings painted a picture of an administration more concerned with personal gain than the public good. As further details came to light, the public's trust in Henyard eroded, and calls for her resignation grew louder. Protests against her leadership intensified, with residents demanding immediate corrective action to restore the integrity of local governance rather than stepping down. Henyard doubled down on her claims of innocence. She insisted that she had been unfairly targeted and that the investigation was an attempt to undermine her leadership. Her refusal to engage with the concerns of both residents and business owners only served to inflame tensions further. The longer she remained in power, the more her credibility diminished, and the public grew increasingly disillusioned with her leadership as the investigation continued. Lightfoot's findings revealed deeper issues within Henyard's administration. Allegations of bias and unethical behavior added to the growing list of concerns. These revelations underscored the greater challenges facing Dalton and Thornton Township, highlighting the dangers of unchecked power and the consequences of a leadership more focused on self-interest than the welfare of the community. The effects of Lightfoot's investigation extended far beyond local government. As more details emerged, it became clear that Henyard's time in office had become a cautionary tale about the importance of accountability and transparency in public leadership. The investigation served as a rallying cry for those seeking to reclaim their community from the grip of political dysfunction, emphasizing the need for structural reforms and capable leadership amid the mounting pressure. The Dalton trustees passed a resolution demanding that Henyard turn over the village's financial records. They also asked the FBI to investigate her alleged misuse of village funds. Henyard admitted to a $2 million deficit, but trustees criticized her for what they saw as an attempt to deflect attention from the root causes of the financial crisis. By inviting federal authorities into the situation, Henyard seemed to be attempting to shift the focus away from local accountability and onto a higher authority. Perhaps in the hope of protecting herself from political fallout, the trustees' swift rejection of Henyard's proposal to involve the FBI was a significant moment in the ongoing conflict. With an overwhelming majority vote, they demonstrated their lack of confidence in her leadership and reinforced their commitment to maintaining local control. The decision to override her veto was seen as a statement of defiance against what many perceived as Henyard's erratic and misguided leadership. This move highlighted the growing divide between the mayor and local government representatives, signaling that the administration was becoming increasingly isolated in the aftermath of the vote. Tensions within the community deepened. The Board of Trustees had acted decisively to take control of the situation and prevent further disruptions caused by Henyard's leadership. Residents expressed frustration with the mayor's continued inability to accept responsibility for the financial crisis, instead blaming others for her administration's failures. At a particularly heated meeting, one trustee, Kiana Belair, made a powerful statement by pointing out that her portrait had been removed from the walls of Village Hall. This symbolic gesture reflected the growing disillusionment with Henyard's leadership, as well as the larger problem of access and transparency under her administration. During the meeting, media representatives were pushed to the back of the room, further obscuring public access to the proceedings. Residents, however, made their voices heard, criticizing Henyard's handling of the situation and calling for her resignation. One resident even confronted the mayor directly, telling her, "You lied to us as residents. You do not stand for me, and I want you to step down as mayor today and save our village from this deficit that you caused despite these demands." Henyard maintained that she was being unfairly targeted. She attempted to deflect criticism by framing herself as the victim of discrimination, particularly because she was a black woman in a position of power. However, many residents were unconvinced by this argument, pointing out that her actions spoke louder than her defense. She was not being criticized for her race, but for her failure to properly manage the town's finances and meet the needs of her constituents. One of the most controversial aspects of Henyard's tenure was her lavish trip to Las Vegas, where she allegedly spent thousands of taxpayer dollars on airfare, hotel accommodations, and meals. Despite repeated requests for an interview, Henyard declined to answer questions about the trip, further fueling public frustration. The trip was seen as emblematic of her disregard for fiscal responsibility and the needs of the community she was supposed to serve as the financial crisis continued to unfold. It became clear that Henyard's administration had become embroiled in a web of corruption and mismanagement. The general fund was in the red, with a $365 million deficit, and police department spending had increased by 21%. Between January and June, 589 checks totaling more than $6 million were authorized but never sent to vendors. 2 police officers were found to have earned more overtime compensation than their regular salaries, and numerous purchases were made using 6 different credit cards, including $440,000 in Amazon payments. Yet receipts for many of these transactions were rarely provided, raising further questions about the handling of public funds. Despite these revelations, Henyard continued to deny any wrongdoing, dismissing the accusations as part of a broader conspiracy against her. However, local officials and residents remained steadfast in their demands for accountability, pointing to the growing pile of evidence against her as the investigation into her activities intensified. It became clear that Henyard had been evading responsibility for her actions. She refused to engage with news organizations, evading their attempts to reach her for interviews, and providing no transparency regarding the general fund's operations. The police department's overspending, the misuse of village credit cards, and the questionable purchases were all under investigation, and the public was left to wonder how long it would take before Henyard would be held accountable for her actions. The situation in Dalton and Thornton Township grew increasingly dire as public trust in the government continued to erode. The financial mismanagement, the embezzlement, and the lack of transparency in Henyard's administration had left the community in a state of turmoil. Amid growing protests, the call for reform became louder, with residents demanding that their leaders prioritize the needs of the people over personal gain. In the end, the story of Tiffany Henyard's time in office serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, the importance of accountability, and the need for transparency in governance. While the investigation into her actions continues, the damage to her reputation may be irreparable. Long after her political career is over, the lessons learned from her leadership, or lack thereof, will continue to shape the future of Dalton and Thornton Township. The community will work to rebuild from the damage caused by Henyard's tenure, striving to restore integrity, financial stability, and trust in local leadership.
His credit card spending is out of control. Mayor Tiffany Henyard didn't respond to any of my requests today, and I'm told she's not in the building.
Tiffany Henyard, the embattled mayor of Dalton and Thornton Township, continued to remain elusive despite repeated attempts by the media to contact her for an interview. On one occasion, I personally tried to track down Mayor Henyard at the village office, but village employees informed me that she was not in the office and did not provide a time frame for her return. This came just a day before a packed community meeting where residents once again demanded accountability for the financial mismanagement plaguing the administration. At this particular meeting, Henyard's criminal defense attorneys, Babe Brindley and Ed McDavid, were present, sitting alongside the village's own legal team. It was clear that Henyard was preparing for a prolonged legal battle, with her defense team closely monitoring the proceedings. Brindley, a well-known federal criminal defense attorney, is renowned for his aggressive tactics, signaling that Henyard was bracing for a tough fight in the face of mounting legal challenges, including the ongoing FBI corruption investigation. As expected, Henyard remained firm in her denial of any wrongdoing. She claimed she was being unfairly targeted and argued that the village trustees were wasting taxpayer money on the investigation, presenting herself as the only one truly serving the needs of the community. However, the situation grew increasingly complicated when it was revealed that Henyard had appointed Ines Lacey, a former member of her administration, to a prominent position despite his controversial past. Lacey had been fired by the Dalton Village Council for disobedience, but Henyard seemed to overlook his legal troubles when making the appointment. Many residents and board members questioned the legality of Lacey's promotion, given his troubled history. Lacey had been previously charged with federal bankruptcy fraud and accused of lying under oath in an effort to conceal assets and income from creditors. His defense team vehemently denied the allegations, asserting his innocence. However, His appointment only deepened the growing sense of mistrust within the community. The media attention surrounding Lacey's legal issues soon became a central point in the larger narrative of Henyard's administration, which was already under heavy scrutiny in response. Some whistleblowers from the Florin Board of Directors began to come forward, exposing how Henyard had allegedly exploited residents, local merchants, and even staff members to bolster her own power. These whistleblowers claimed that Henyard had fostered a false narrative of success, attributing it to the hard work and taxes paid by the residents of Thornton Township and Dalton, when in reality, much of the financial progress had been unsustainable despite the growing chorus of criticism. Henyard continued to deny any wrongdoing, dismissing her opponents as simply seeking attention. Her refusal to acknowledge the concerns raised by residents, business owners, and even members of her own team fueled further resentment within the community. But things didn't stop there. Henyard's most recent appointment, that of Michael A. Smith, further stoked tension. Smith, a well-known politician from the south suburbs, was named Henyard's top assistant lobbyist. Despite earning an annual salary of $100,000, Smith's appointment raised serious concerns within the community. Smith, who had extensive political experience and was well-versed in legal matters, had previously been involved in a high-profile scandal in 2012, where a young trustee had resigned after pleading guilty to stealing patrol duties and impersonating a police officer. This incident, along with Smith's troubling history, including multiple charges ranging from official misconduct to domestic violence, cast serious doubt on his suitability for the role. The appointment of Smith only served to deepen the suspicions surrounding Henyard's judgment and decision-making. Many residents and trustees saw it as yet another instance of the mayor surrounding herself with controversial figures, further alienating her from both her political allies and the general public. At a time when Dalton was already grappling with significant financial difficulties, these troubling decisions seemed to only exacerbate the situation, rather than offer any solutions as the pressure mounted. The community's frustration grew, and calls for Henyard's resignation became louder. Despite the mounting evidence of corruption and financial mismanagement, Henyard refused to step down. Instead, she dug in her heels, continuing to deny any responsibility for the crises unfolding under her watch. Her refusal to resign, combined with the ongoing FBI investigation, left the community in a state of uncertainty, wondering whether Henyard's tenure as mayor could survive the ever-increasing scrutiny. While Tiffany Henyard's time as mayor of Dalton and Thornton Township was far from over, her position had become increasingly precarious. Her legal battles, controversial appointments, and mounting public dissatisfaction were undermining her ability to govern effectively. The community's calls for accountability only grew louder as more details of her administration's failures came to light. Whether Henyard could weather the storm and restore her credibility remained uncertain. But the growing divide between her and the residents she was supposed to serve seemed to suggest that her time in office might be coming to an end until the next community meeting, where this saga is sure to unfold further. We remain in a holding pattern, watching closely as the drama of Tiffany Henyard's leadership continues to play out in the public eye.